Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12:30, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, so today we have a little. It's called a quiz on the modules, but it's actually just a little exercise, I guess you'd call it. Just a little thing I'd like for you guys to do. And so here's probably the easiest way to explain it to you is to just go through the little quiz description. And I wish I wouldn't have had to call it a quiz because it's not a quiz. It's an activity, I guess you'd call it. But there was no other way for me to format it to get this done on this particular software other than calling it a quiz. So there's really no right or wrong answers for this, okay? So it's just a matter of doing something and getting it done. All right, so anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have, okay? So I'm in student view, okay? And so this is just exactly what you guys are gonna see, all right? So here's Wednesday right here, and here's our little exercise, okay? It's called a quiz, it's not a quiz, okay? That's just the name. So here are the instructions for the little exercise, okay? When students choose projects for our classes, they use an online magazine called Woodsmith Library. With only a couple of exceptions, this is the only source students are allowed to use for project plans. Today's quiz, or today's activity, is an exercise in how to properly submit a project to your teacher that you would like to make. Here's what you need to do for the quiz, and I should have go online and find the site linked below. So you'd be able to click on this and it'd take you directly to the site. In the upper right portion, hold on, I got somebody coming in, sorry. In the upper right portion of the page, you should see where you're supposed to log into the site. The login information is below. So for example, they ask for the email, and this is the email you'll enter. It's just my email address here at the school. And then the password for the site is LEIGH and the number 1. After you log into the site, there's a menu near the top of the page. You want to click on the Search or Browse Issues link. This will take you to a list of all the magazine issues that are available to you. You can use the search window near the top of the page to try and search for specific types of projects, or you can simply browse individual issues to get an idea of what's available. Here's what I want you to physically actually do, okay? And we're going to walk you through it too, so don't have kittens right now. I want you to find a project that might interest you and fill out the information that's asked for in the quiz, okay? Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it, okay? Here's an example for you, okay? For example, so if you found a project called a roll top chisel case and you found it in issue number 238 and page number 24, that's what you would enter. So we're going to walk you guys through this, okay? So I'm going to leave student view here. The page on Canvas isn't there. Yes, it is. It should be. So I'm going to go back to student view. So this is exactly what you're seeing. Week 7. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm in the right darn class. I may have just totally messed you up. Manufacturing 2. Modules. There we go. That's why. Sorry about that. You are absolutely right, Noah. Thank you. So let's go back to student view. We'll look at this. That was bad for me. All right, so here's our project choice exercise. We're going to click on this Woodsmith Library link, okay? And I'm going to log out so you can see the whole login process. So the login was my email address and then the word LEIGH and the number 1, okay? So it's just that's my email address, and the password is and the number 1, LEIGH and the number 1, and we hit login. Okay, so this is where we want to start right here under search or browse issues. Now let me clarify a couple things for you guys, okay? Because I've had questions in previous classes, and I want to see if I can kind of help you out before you start freaking out, okay? This is not a situation where you are choosing a project right now that you're going to make, okay? This is practice. It's an exercise. The whole idea is to introduce you guys to where students find their plans and how they submit a certain project for approval. Normally what would happen in a regular semester, 18 weeks long, blah, 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 you know, non-COVID, all this stuff, it was just a normal semester. In intermediate and advanced woods, probably the first week, into the first week or the beginning of the second week, usually into the first week, we would wander over to the computer lab in the science building. There's a lab there that's got like 30 computers in it. And we would sit down and students would go through these magazines, start looking at different projects, okay? I would ask them to write down 5 different projects that they see that they thought, well, that one's cool, I wouldn't mind trying that, or that one was kind of neat, or man, this is something I really want to make, this is exactly, you know, what I want to make. And I'd ask them to write down 5 different projects, okay? They'd write down the issue number, basically what's found down here. So this is issue number 247, 248, 249. I could care less about the volume number of the year. All I care about is the issue number, okay? They'd write down the page number that that specific project is listed on, and they'd write down the name of the project. They would turn in those 5 projects on a piece of paper. What I do is I go through those 5 projects and I start making comments on, okay? For example, this looks like a great project. It's perfect for you. This one would be fine. This one is too complex or too big for a single semester, so it's not going to be allowed. This one's like super expensive. You may want to rethink it. In other words, I give students some feedback on the projects they listed on the sheet so they get a better idea of where my head is and what my expectations are and what I feel a student is capable of based on what I've seen from them in the past, so that they can do a better job of choosing the actual project they're going to make, okay? So that's the whole idea of going through these magazines and looking at different projects and writing down different projects and stuff like that. So all we're doing here is showing you guys the basic process, how we go about picking projects, because this is the only source for plans for a project, with like 2 exceptions, that you will be allowed, if we ever show back up to school, that you would ever be allowed to choose a project from. In other words, you're not going to be allowed to just go on the internet and find a random project and bring it in the plans and get approval for a build. You're not going to be able to draw your own plans up. Every single project, with 2 exceptions, I have 2 sets of plans for projects that I paid for that have nothing to do with these magazines that we do a lot of. There's 2 projects outside of these plans that you would be allowed to do, okay? So this is what you have to choose from. So I want you guys to get comfortable moseying through these magazines. I want you to kind of understand what to look for. I want you to understand how these magazines are structured, you know, how to look for something. And I want you to understand, just by kind of looking at a project and looking at the plans, you should, after time, be able to figure out, well, there's no way he's gonna let me do this. This one's way too complex, or whatever the case may be. Now, normally, in a normal situation, once again, I'm talking, you know, a non-COVID situation, I would have a very good idea of each and every student's abilities and level of comfort and level of experience once they've gone through beginning woods, okay? One of the things I use beginning woods for is so that if a student decides to take intermediate woods after taking beginning woods, one of the things I do during beginning woods is, over the course of 18 weeks, assess your level of ability. Not everybody is going to be at the same level of ability at the end of 18 weeks. Heck, even at the beginning of 18 weeks. Some kids are going to tear right through the beginning class and do fantastic. Some kids are going to struggle. Some kids are just going to, it'll be the first time they've ever held a tool in their hand or used a power tool, and they'll start slow, but they'll finish strong. So by the time you get into intermediate woods, I have a very good impression as to what you would be capable of doing. And I have more often than not been correct when it comes to that. So here's what we're going to do. One of the other things I'm doing with this little exercise is I'm trying to figure out what you guys are interested in, okay? What are the kinds of things that my current students would feel is interesting and worthy of making? What do you think is cool? What do you think really sucks? What do you think, wow, I would never make something like that, I have no use for it? Are my students thinking of making something for themselves? Are they thinking of making something for somebody else? Just trying to get a handle, because I haven't seen you guys out in the shop. I don't know what you're going ooh and ah over and what you're going, oh, that sucks. So I don't know. So this is helping me to get a handle on what your guys' current level of interest is. So one of the things you need to keep in mind as you go through these magazines, if and when we do come back this school year, okay, it is not going to be normal. You're going to have at best 8 weeks to complete a project, okay? At each week, you will have at best 2 hours a week, 1 hour per day, 2 days per week that you're physically in the shop and able to work. Before you ask, no, you will never be allowed to take a project home and work on it at home and then bring it back and continue working on it here. All work on projects have to be done here in the shop. So let me nip that in the bud before anybody gets too excited, okay? So in other words, you're gonna have 2 hours a week for a maximum of 8 weeks to finish a project. So you gotta keep that in mind when you look at projects and think, wow, that's something that would be cool to make. So in other words, what I'm saying is that the projects you look at and you think about and you think are cool and you think you might want to make someday, okay, if we ever come back this year, need to be small or not too complex, and easily doable within the amount of time we'll have. Look at it this way: before you actually start working on a project, I will vet your choices. I will go through your choices and say yes or no or yes. I have to approve any project you make. So if you walk into these magazines, you're cruising along, you start saying, let me leave these magazines. So I'm gonna let them see here. I like this. No, that's not good. That's not good. You start looking through, you're cruising, and all of a sudden you see this, you go, oh man, I want to make that. Come on. I want to make this entertainment center right here. That's cool, you know? Not going to happen, okay? Let me pull that up so you get a little better idea. Okay, not going to happen, okay? First of all, there is no way even a student in Advanced Woods that has already spent 3.5 years in my shop is going to finish that in a semester, much less 8 weeks, okay? Also, there are very few students I've had over the years that would be capable of finishing a project like this, period, even over the course of a full school year, okay? So don't even think about it, all right? What I'm looking for is things like this. Let me pull a few things up I've found over the course of, I don't know, last, oh, how many hours? Okay, I'm just gonna pull a couple things up here real quick, okay? And please, please, please ask questions if you have questions. For example, there's one, can we bring your own wood to the shop? That is really, that depends. Usually the answer is yes. Usually the answer is yes. The difficulty we have a lot of times, and it shouldn't be as bad doing it this way because the projects are smaller for the most part. Generally, the difficulty we have is a student will bring a bunch of lumber in and they don't have enough. And then they can't get more of it. And then there's this, and then there's that. And there's, well, I've got this much now, and in about 3 weeks when my dad gets paid or when I see my granddad again, I'm going to get the rest of it, and then they don't end up getting it. So that's one of the things I keep in mind. But usually in a situation like this where the projects are generally going to be minimal and their size is going to be a little smaller, generally it shouldn't be a problem. So right now I would say that the answer to your question, Noah, is probably yes, but I will not guarantee anything, okay? So I'm gonna pull one up here. I pulled up, I found a whole bunch of them, and I haven't even gone through a dozen magazines yet. So I'm going to show you this right here, okay? This is small. It incorporates some things in it that I like a lot, especially for students that have not stepped foot in my shop. And for just about all of you, that is the case. You have never stepped foot in this shop. So one of the things I look for are projects that have certain details to them. For example, this particular project is what we call, it's a version of what we call casework. In other words, you're making a box, okay? It's got dados, which are these grooves here that accept the drawer bottom. It's got rabbets. It's got locking joints right here. It's got some basic router work here. There's a lot of little aspects to it, but a couple of the things I like the most about it are this. Okay, there's very few parts. It's not incredibly complex. Okay. It would challenge a student because whether you believe it or not, the smaller projects generally are more difficult to make. And the reason for that is that there's less room for error. Yes, when you build your project, you take them home. I cannot store all these projects. When students build projects here, they're going home. Okay, they're going home with you. Okay, so let me see if I can pull another one up here. Here's one that I thought was kind of cool, especially because a lot of these magazines have a lot of things in them. They're like, wow, that looks like it was something from 30 years ago. And in a lot of ways they are. Here's another one. It's a charging station for phones and junk like that, okay? And this is another one that has a lot of things incorporated into it that I want my students to know how to do. It's got dados, it's got rabbets, it's got notches, it's got angled cuts, it's got some detailed measurements that have to be followed, things like that, okay? It's not huge, but it's a purposeful project. In other words, it's kind of cool where they hide the cords. They've got a little cord. If you look in the plans down here, they hide the cords. Where was it? There was another picture of it somewhere right here. This front part flops open and it latches using little rare earth magnets, but the cords are kept underneath, and there's little rubber coated dowels that hold your phone, and the cords plug in that way. So things like that. I'll pull one more up here and show it to you. Here's one right here that is different. And then we'll talk about the plans themselves. This is actually, let me get to the image of it. This is a wall shelf with some drawers. It's what they call a blind mount wall shelf. You can't necessarily tell how it's mounted. There's 3 drawers here. It's a little bit larger project, but it does incorporate dados where these dividers go, rabbets at the end here, locking rabbets and things like that. It does incorporate some of the basic joinery techniques I want all of my students to know how to do. It's got laminations in it, blah, 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 things like that, okay? So those are the sorts of things I would hope you guys would look for, okay? So let me get back to the regular page here. All right, so a couple things about these magazines. Okay, they've been coming out since 1979, okay? Longer than, well, let's just say it's a long time, okay? So you'll notice that these magazines down here, the covers of them are in black and white, okay? We do not choose projects from these older magazines. It wasn't until about 1992 when they started having color covers. This is where we start picking our projects from. The problem with these older ones with the black and white covers is the plans are incomplete. There's a lot of mistakes. They're not very well thought out. Most of them just flat suck, okay? So we're gonna stick with the ones that have color covers. Now, a couple other oddities about these plans. I'm just gonna click on any magazine and pull it up, okay? What you're gonna find is on the contents page, and they've kept this pretty consistent all the way through the years. You're going to find what they're going to list is the names of the projects. They'll sometimes have techniques that they're teaching you how to do, like using paint, how to do edge laps, how to do a spline groove, blah, 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 things like that. But there's generally 2 or 3 projects in every single issue, okay? And usually, not always, but usually they have one larger project, one more complex project like this garden bench, and they'll have at least one smaller, easier to do project like, say, this spice drawer, okay, or this wall storage system, okay? So generally they'll have one big project and one little project, and then they'll teach you how to do certain specific things throughout the rest of the magazine. So almost every issue has a small project in it. Let's pull another one up and show you. So there's a spice drawer and a wall storage system here. Let's just randomly grab another one and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll just click on anything. Okay, so the big project in this one, usually the biggest project is on the cover. So this is a cabinet, like a kitchen cabinet type thing. And we'll look and see what the small project is. Okay, there's a nightstand here, and there's a plate storage rack. I don't know anybody that stores their plates like that. This is what I'm talking about when they do a lot of old school stuff that just really doesn't fit in the homes anymore. So both of those projects, the storage rack, and I'm guessing this nightstand is probably pretty small as well. Let's take a look at it. Actually, we've had several of these done in the classroom, and this is a more advanced intermediate project, and it's definitely a full 18-week semester to get it done. So this is not something I would have somebody coming straight out of beginning. I would look at this. If a student said, yeah, I want to do that, I'd like to say, well, no, you're going to have to put some more time in before you get to the point where you're capable of doing that and doing it well. So, so that what we're looking for is the smaller projects. Now, let me show you something else about these projects. Let me see if this one does it. Okay. So some of the projects, if I go back here to the beginning of it, okay. So for example, if for some reason you chose this project to fill out the little quiz, it would be issue number 124. It's shown down here on the bottom of the page, and it's also up here in the address bar. The issue number is right here at the top, 124. It would be page number 6, and it would be, the name would be, let go of it, nightstand. Okay, that's what you'd call it. All right, so let me show you a couple things about these plans. All plans have at least the following 2 things, okay, at the very least. They have drawings with dimensions. In other words, they have the drawings for individual parts and assemblies, and there's dimensions on these drawings, okay? For example, this piece right here, this side rail, C, is 3 inches wide. It's 16.5 inches long, okay? This side panel, E, okay, is 16 and 7/16 inches wide and 19 and 11/16 inches long. So there's going to be drawings with dimensions. There may be little insets like this that show you specific details of certain things, like these little plugs right here that plug the bottom so you don't see it, blah, 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 little tenon detail. Here's a tenon detail right here. Here's a curve detail and a lower front rail detail. In other words, they put little insets of certain things that they can't fit on the overall drawing, all right? So there will be drawings. Oh, let me go back one. And one of the things I like about this the most is in the very beginning, there's just a description of the project itself and maybe some history behind it. Maybe how they finished it or something like that, or certain specific features that are unique to the project. But when you get into the meat of it, the text in here is very important, okay? The very first thing they mention in the plans here is the case. In other words, the 2 sides and the back, okay? That would be the first thing you start on. And you do not go any further than the case or any of the parts associated with the case until that case is done. So you start with the case, and the very first thing on the case is the posts, these 4 legs, okay? Then you do the rails over here, then you do the panels, then you do the front rails, okay? So they're just gonna walk you through step by step in words, what they want you to do, and in drawings, okay? They'll often reference the drawings, okay, in this text, all right? So you're going to follow that pretty specifically. So it goes on and on and on and on. Then at the end of the project, sometimes it's on the first page of the project, sometimes it's at the end of the project, sometimes it's at the back of the magazine. They have switched it so many times, it's difficult to tell. But there will always be what we call a cut list associated with every project. That's another one of the reasons that I use these specific magazines. A cut list basically lists all the individual parts, how many of each part you need. So for example, A, the 4 posts, the legs, there are 4 each, that's this number in parentheses, and it lists the overall dimensions of the part. Now let me make something very, very, very clear to you. Every single set of plans in these magazines is going to list the dimensions for each part in the exact same order every single time. In other words, the very first number, 1 3/4 inches, will always be the thickness of the part. The second number, 1 3/4 inches, will always be the width of the part. And the last number in the dimensions will always be this 27 1/4 inches dimension, will always be the length of a part. Okay, so they will always, every single time, I have never seen any cut list in these magazines that did not list the parts and their dimensions as thickness and then width and then length. And if you are smart, hopefully all of you are smart, you'll recognize that that order in which they list those dimensions is the same as our order of operations in the shop. We always do thickness first. That's the first number in the dimensions. Then we do the width. That's the second number. Then we do the length. That's how we move through the shop. That's the same order that these dimensions are listed in these plans. Okay, so that's a cut list. Now there is a lot more to a cut list than we're giving you right now. I'm going to try my best not to overwhelm you, but I probably will anyway. So one of the things you can look at when you look at these projects, if you look at a project like, for example, this nightstand, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages long, that's too much. Not going to get done in 8 weeks, 9 weeks, not going to happen. So the length, the amount of information needed to complete a project in this regard, 6 pages, is too much. You can't do it in 8 weeks. The second hint that this project is too much to do in 8 weeks is the cut list itself. Look at all the parts, okay? That is a ton of parts. There is a ton of joinery on all the parts. There is no way you're going to get a project with this many parts together in 8 weeks at 2 hours a week, okay? But if you look at a project like, let's go back, we'll pick another random magazine. I'm just going to randomly click on one. I'll click on that. Okay, I'm going to open it to the index page, and let's see what we got here. Projects. They have a quilt rack, a bed, and a mirror. Looks like 3 projects. Quilt rack, this thing right here. A bed, this is kind of cool. The bed's up top, and there's a desk underneath it, and then a mirror. Okay, so let's take a look at, for example, let's just look at this mirror, okay, on page 34. So I'm going to go ahead and I can either sit here, and at the bottom there's this thing that you can hit the right arrow until you get to page 34. Like I can find 34, you can see the number right above it showing me what page. I can click on that, that'll get me to it. Or I can just go up here and I can enter the page 34 that way. Wow, that was weird. Okay, so here's the mirror. Wow, it's missing a page. Something is seriously wrong. It did this on another project and it was missing a page at the end. It's really weird. It shouldn't be happening. There we go. There it is. So here's the project. Okay. Now we're going to ignore the mirror portion of it for now. That's really expensive, so I wouldn't recommend anybody tries anything like that. But let's take a look at how we can tell if this is too complex of a project to try and get done in 8 weeks. Okay, so I'm looking and I'm going, okay, well, there doesn't seem to be a ton of parts. Okay, it doesn't seem too coconuts in the way it's built. Let's take a closer look at how it's built. Wow, so let me see here. That's one page, and that's just the description. There's a page, but in regards to just plans and instructions, there's only 2 pages. That's it. When you see the cut list at the end of the plans, oh, we got a little more, 3, 4 pages. Why do they do that? Why do they put the cut list in the middle? Okay, so there's 4 pages. Not too bad, okay? When you look at the cut list, there's not a ton of parts here, okay? That's more than acceptable in regards to the number of parts, okay? I don't see anything super complex. I don't see dimensions scattered all over this thing with all kinds of crazy joinery and things like that. It's simple mortise and tenon joinery, and a mortise and tenon is nothing more than a square hole, which is the mortise, that a square peg, which is the tenon on the end of this piece, fits into. That is a mortise and tenon joint, really straightforward joint to do, okay? So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is there's going to be, let's see, here's a project right here. A lot of students have done this in the past as a fill-in. Maybe they finished a project they started at the beginning of the semester and had a few weeks left at the end of the semester, so they did this. So let's take a look at this one, okay? So it is the storage center. It looks like it's on page 12. Let's take a look. Yep, the storage center is on page 12. So we're just going to go to page 12. Okay. And we've got, well, see, now they put the cut list right here. This last one, they put it in the middle. The first one, they put it at the end. This one's right here at the beginning. Well, let's see what we got. We got 1 page, 2 pages, 3, 4, 5. 5 pages, pretty much it. Well, 5.5. And 2 of those pages are just fluff, right? It's just a little description here and then an overall drawing. This is actually a really handy drawing right here. They generally always put this drawing in here. There's no dimensions on it, but it kind of gives you an exploded view. Like if you've ever seen those pictures of like a car that's been disassembled and it's all floating in the air and you can see all the different parts, this is kind of what this is. It gives you a really good idea of the complexity of the project at first glance. In other words, a simple notch, a simple tongue or groove, not much to it, little angle here, a little dado back here, not much to it, little bandsaw work right here on this curve, not much to it, okay? And the cut list, very straightforward, not much to it, okay? So that's what we're looking for. Now, if this is the project I chose to answer the questions on the quiz, okay, all you need to do is type in that it is issue 169. This is page 12 is where it starts, and it's called a drop front storage center. So I'm going to go back to the quiz. Okay. So when you go to take the quiz, okay, it's going to say Woodsmith Library is where we get all of our plans for projects. When you make a choice for a project that will be submitted to your teacher for approval, you need to provide several pieces of information. This assignment will test your ability to provide accurate information regarding a project choice. Just provide your answer for each question below. It wants to know issue number, it wants to know page number, and it wants to know the name of the project. So if I look back here, issue 169, page 12, drop front storage center. So all I have to do is issue 169, page 12. That's it. Okay, that's all you'd have to do. And then submit quiz, bam, done. Okay, so my main reasoning behind doing this exercise, I have a lot of different reasons for doing it, but one reason I'm really curious about, I will look at that real quick, William, is what are you guys interested in? What are you going to find in these magazines that piques your interest? What are the sort of things that I should start thinking about that you guys might want to make? Let me take a look at the one he's looking at here, and we'll see what we got. 15A. And we will look at the, and we will, where's the projects? This one right here, I'm guessing, page 22. Let's see. Okay. Doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too bad. Let's get a closer look. Okay. The only thing I see about this project that makes it difficult, now whether you believe me or not, I don't know, but I can tell you from experience that anytime you have miters, these 45-degree angles, that tends to create serious issues for students. Not that we couldn't get around it, not that we couldn't make it work, but those will be the most difficult aspect of this project. No matter how simple you think those miters look, it is incredibly difficult to get them to fit nice without gaps. But other than that, straightforward, not hard, not hard. How do they do this? Are you talking about just these guys or the whole thing itself, I'm wondering? You're probably talking about the whole. This is just telling us how to make those. Let's take a look at the cut list. Yeah, the whole thing. Okay, that's what I figured. Let's take a look at the cut list. So this is really cool. I'm glad you pulled this one up because right now I don't see a cut list. Okay, I do not see one. What that tells me is that it's probably at the very back of the magazine. I don't know why they keep doing this. And this is not that old of a magazine. So if you go to the very back, so this is for the table, the cover, and here's the so here's the cut list for the poker chip case. Not bad. Small number of parts, not real huge, piece of cake, no problem. So that would be one, William, that I would consider, depending on your current level of experience and ability, okay? I look very, very, and that's what's gonna make it so hard is because I don't know you guys. I don't know your level of ability, okay? So we'll have to find some way to figure that out and to find out where you guys are in regards to your knowledge. And honestly, it really comes down to how good are you with your hands? Have you worked with your hands before? Have you done things around the house, done things with an uncle or a grandparent or a father or a relative or a friend or something like that? Are you comfortable reading a set of plans and understanding what it's telling you? Things like that. For example, when you look at a set of plans like this is a really bad example. The poker table itself is just an incredibly bad example. Here we go. When you look at a set of plans, can you look at this and understand what it's telling you to do? Because if you look at this right here, okay, what this little inset, this little side section view is telling you how to do, okay, the only thing that's telling you how to do is to create this tenon on the bottom of this piece and this piece. How to create this shape on these mitered pieces and how to make sure the bottom fits in. Okay, so look at all this information here, and if you can make sense of that information, you're way, way, way ahead of the game. Okay, but if you look at this and go, oh my God, geez, I don't even know what it's telling me. Brandon, come here, show me how to do this. And I have to sit down and show you how to measure out every single aspect of this. It's not going to happen. Okay, it's just not going to happen. There's not enough time in the day, in other words. Not that I wouldn't love to help you, but there's just not enough time in the day. Now, William, one thing I want you to notice about this, and I'm glad you picked this one because there's a few things I want to show you. The only other thing about this project that makes me nervous is the hardware. For example, this brass latch, these two brass handles, these brass alignment pins, okay, these brass feet. All right, so let's go to the back here and look at the hardware. It's going to be in the very last page again. Okay, and look at the hardware. So this is a list of the specialty hardware that you would need to do this project. Now, when it comes to basic hardware like screws, nails, things like that, that's part of a class fee. That we have that stuff here. That's not something you'll have to get yourself. But if you choose a project that has stuff like this, like a brass latch and brass feet and brass poles and things like that. That's something the student would have to get themselves, and they would have to get it immediately upon project approval. You can't wait till the last minute to get it, because a lot of times what happens is certain measurements, certain dimensions, certain cuts depend on the hardware that's going to be installed. For example, if you can't find the exact brass latch and brass feet and brass poles that it calls for in the plans, and you have to get something a little different, it may alter some of the measurements and some of the work you have to do on the box itself. So specialty hardware has to be bought in advance, okay? And I don't know if you guys have ever seen them before. Have you ever seen a televator? It's one of those TV cabinets where the TV's hidden, the flat screen TV's hidden in it, but you push a button and the TV raises up out of the cabinet. Have you guys ever seen one of those? Okay, I had a student turn that in as a project request a few years ago, right? I immediately turned it down, and the reason I turned it down is this. Just the hardware that raises and lowers the TV, not including any of the wood, anything, but just the device that raises and lowers the TV is $700, okay? So that usually is a big in not just my mind, but whoever's paying the bills mind as well. So cost has a lot to do with some of this too. You may find that by the time you buy, because brass parts are not cheap, you may find that by the time you pay for the latches, the feet, the poles, and alignment pins, that you've got 50, 60 bucks in this, and you haven't even bought a piece of wood yet, okay? Another thing they'll show you in the end, usually at the back of each issue, they'll usually show you a photograph of the completed project, but they will also sometimes show you, here it is, sources as to where to find some of the specialty hardware. So the poker chip case, you can go to Lee Valley, and you can find, this is the part number for the latches, this is the part number for the alignment pins, this is the part number for the poles and the feet. So they'll provide sources where you can find these specific parts that they're talking about. And if it's an older magazine, right, if it's 5, 7, 8, 10 years old, those parts may not even be available anymore. Okay, so that's got to be taken into account too. And we'll talk about this more over the course of the next couple of days. You guys do not have to do this today. Okay, we're going to work on it tomorrow, and we'll probably work on it Friday too. Okay, although it says it's due today, it's not due today. Okay, we're going to work on it together. I want you guys to understand this, and I don't want you to have to do it outside of class. Now, you're more than welcome to go through these magazines outside of class. Please go right ahead. Come up with a dozen different things you think you might want to make. Okay, now, like I said before, this does not tie you to a project. A project you pick and write down in this quiz, in this exercise, is not the project you're doing. That might be someday, but it's not right now. We don't even know when and if we're going to be back. And I don't even know for sure what the schedule is going to look like exactly when we come back. So there's no way to really engrave this in stone. This is simply a way for you guys to kind of see what's available, to start looking around, because these are the magazines we use every single semester for project choices. This is it. You are not going to be scouring the internet for something on Pinterest that you can make. It doesn't work that way. You will not be allowed to submit a set of plans from Pinterest or eBay or from Bob that sells plans in his garage in Canada. It doesn't work that way. These are the magazines you'll have to choose from. And there's a lot. I mean, there's got to be 1,000 projects in these magazines, okay? So that's going to be it for today. I hope it helped a little bit. I hope you'll have some questions next class if you're confused, okay? So, yeah, I know Bob's pretty cool, but they're hard to follow, man. Those Canadians, you never know. All right. So thank you guys for being here. You guys take care of yourselves tonight, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and have a great day. Okay. Bye, folks.